Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Loki. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, we have our Loki kicking it with a whole bunch of other Lokis, and we kind of get to learn a little bit more about them as they've kind of been living in this situation for a while. Obviously, this is known as the Void, and they also have a giant cloud all-consuming thing known as Alioth, which we don't even know what that thing is, whether it's like a specific species or something. Like when you see like a face in the cloud, it almost looks like this, like you'd almost see like from like one of the horsemen, like one of the horsemen, like specifically from like Darksiders riding one of their actual horses. It kind of looked like it could be something like that. Like it almost looks like the skull face of a horse. Thing looks sinister, and anything in its path it eats, because we find out, because it's interesting, because we find out the place they're in is known as the Void. Now, my thought, it seems like it's kind of what I thought it was. It is kind of like a pocket dimension to a certain extent, but not really. It's basically the Void, the place that's at the end of time, where basically everything, where every moment and everything in time kind of comes to this particular point and stops. That's what the whole point of pruning is. It's the basic, because I mean, it makes sense because, like, from a scientific standpoint, breaking, like, matter doesn't disappear. It just transforms. Like, it just transfers and transforms. It's kind of like debate. Once again, I'm not well-versed in science. That's something I've picked up just listening to plenty enough science fiction stuff. That might not even be real science. That might be science fiction science. But whatever the case may be, I think that is a natural principle. And that is kind of why people say, like, well, beings are energy, and that energy doesn't disappear. It just, like, transforms. It transfers so much, it's kind of that whole deal. So like there's no way to destroy everything. Like you can't destroy matter, so they just transfer it to the end of time where everything stops. Because before, I thought the TVA was, I believe I made the comparison comparing the TVA to the vanishing point in Legends of Tomorrow. I think the Void is more like the vanishing point in the Legends of Tomorrow. To a certain extent, because the Void is at the end of time, the vanishing point is outside of time, the TV. So I guess the TVA still would be the more apt description, like could be the more apt comparison to the vanishing point from Legends of Tomorrow. But my initial thought was that basically the place they were in was essentially the equivalency would be like Crisis on Infinite Earths in DC, where everything collapsed into one Earth. I thought that's kind of what it was. Like everything and everyone pruned ended up in a collapsed place where every timeline, everything that ever collapsed ended up in one spot. Which kind of is true, but it's not necessarily, like, once again, it's not like they collapse all in one Earth. It's like, no, they collapse at the end of time, because time at the Void is where everything stops. There's no progression. That's why you don't have to worry about, like, oh, that's why those branches disappear, because you didn't destroy them, you just transferred them. Which is still dark, because you're putting them in basically a pit to be destroyed. Because that's also the thing, too. Apparently, dark matter can't be destroyed, so what the hell does, like, Alioth do? Like, if he's not like just break, like, does he have the power to just break down dark matter? So I guess it's impossible to capture what Alioth is able to do in the form of those prune sticks. I guess, like, I don't know. That's interesting. And also interesting, too, to know, like, obviously not everyone in the TVA knows that. The only person who knows that is Ravonna. She's the only one that knows the true nature, that they don't, when they prune, they don't kill something, they pop it to the end. So, and that's a big question this episode, is like, how much does Ravonna actually know? And then, like, during the conversation, she's like, I don't know who's in charge. So I was like, whoa. So you're aware that you're a variant. You know that you've seen behind the curtain, but you've only seen behind one curtain. You haven't seen behind the larger curtain, because she does take orders from the timekeepers, but even she was fooled. And that's what confused me, because we know she started off as a hunter. I basically thought you couldn't get promoted. I thought you were kind of, whatever your job is, you were kind of stuck there. Because there's never been any conversations about promotions, because it's like, oh, we were kind of all made for our specific jobs, and that's what we kind of got stuck at. So I just assumed, like, wait, you went from a hunter to a judge. How did that happen? I guess it's like, I mean, why did the quote-unquote timekeepers choose you. But like I said, she's in the know about, right, maybe that's why she's also special, because like she was in on the knowledge of like, right, you're all variants, and it's like, but she still believes in what they do. It's like, right, there's this sacred mission, variant or not, I believe in this mission of the timeline, which I'm like, once again, it's interesting because Loki's are supposed to be the liars and manipulators. We have no idea whether Ravonna was 100% telling the truth or not. Some of her actions make you seem like, no, it does seem like she was kept in the dark about certain aspects. So she didn't know, she thought the timekeepers were really the timekeepers, and then to find out, like, wait, they're robots. There's someone else behind the screen. There's somebody behind this, like, curtain, great Oz, great and powerful type of situation. So she's willing to help Sylvie. It's like, right, we'll have an alliance because you want to know who's really behind this. I want to know it, so let's join together. She even tells her, like, no, Loki's not dead. Even saying, like, right, there's no way to get to the void. But then, like, Sylvie kind of brings up something. It's like, right, I was able to hide the apocalypses because I couldn't create any branches. So that's how I was able to stay hidden. So what's beyond the void? Because anything, there, like, would just be a new timeline. So there has to be something beyond the void. So it's like, right, we have a special ship that would take us to, because obviously she's trying to gather files from like the beginning of time, but obviously like Sylvie was asking about the end of time. So Ravonna, it's like, right, we'll make this deal. And then they keep shaking hands and Sylvie's not letting it go because she's like, right. And Miss Minute, someone looking through the files about the ship and everything. It's like, It's like, this could just be you lying to me. And then it's like, yeah, they were just buying time until more agents showed up. And obviously, it's like, Ravonna's like, don't worry, I'll lock you in a time loop of your good memory. You have any of those? And she's like, I have one. I was like, is it one of her moments with Loki? And she stands up. I'm like, are you about to? And she does. She prunes herself. I was like, oh, that's actually she like, if she wants to she found out Loki might still be alive, so she's going there. I'm like, oh, that's actually really sweet. And then it's like, oh, she pruned herself. And then Ravonna's like, well, good job, back to work and everything. So once again, not filling them in on it. And her conversation with B15 kind of answers a lot of that she does believe in what they do. And for her, it's like, we need to keep up this lie so that we can, until we get answers for everything, because if everyone finds out the truth, like, this whole operation is going to go belly up, because no one's going to be like, wait, because everyone's going to have an existential crisis, because everything they've ever known, what they believe, they all believe themselves to have been made by the TVA and the timekeepers, and everything they believed in, they spent their lives towards believing in this cause, it's BS. But for whatever reason, Ravonna's the only one that's like, despite finding out the truth, she still believes in the mission. At the very least, when it came to the timekeepers, it still seems like who's ever behind this, she still believes in that regard. It's interesting because obviously the theory is this all leads to Kang. So what if, like, because obviously there's a thing of like, right, they have an intimate connection in the comic books, as people have said. I brought that up, I think, last episode as well. So what if this is actually going to lead to them falling in love, which would be interesting, because I think that'd be an interesting parallel to Loki and Sylvie if, like, Ravonna and Kang kind of represented that. So, like, she finds out who's behind the curtain and she believes in what he's doing so much that she's like, despite everything, the TVA, whatever ends up happening to the TVA in the next episode, she's like, I will serve you willingly because I believe in this, because she's under the impression that Kang is trying to, maybe in his own way, maybe he's, because it seems like we're potentially, if theories are what they are and people do believe this is leading to Kang, we know we're getting Kang at some point in time, played by Jonathan Majors because of Quantum Mania, but maybe we're sowing those seeds a little earlier. So what if he's pulling a Thanos, where he believes, no, like, I'm doing the right thing, like, I'm cutting away all the branches, all the nasty, all the terrible things. I'm leading towards a good timeline. At least that's the lie he's going to be feeding Ravonna or anyone else that might be on his side. Like, I'm leading to this utopia being built at the end of the time. Or if it's BS, where it's just kind of like, hey, I'm trying to become Mr. All-Powerful, and I can do that if everything in history goes the way I want and need it to go. Because some people say, like, some theories were that Kang might be creating a timeline where this is the only timeline he went. Very, very Doctor Strange, like, when he was like, right, there's only one timeline where the Avengers are able to beat Thanos, and that's the one where Tony was saved, and Tony ends up sacrificing himself at the end of it all in Endgame. So I don't know, that's where my mind is kind of currently at, just because all the theories I've kind of heard from other people, and, so who knows? But I love the conversation with B15, where it's kind of like, like, I get, this isn't about the TVA. This is about you. You're just trying to figure it out before Sylvie does. It's like, the difference between you and her is you want this. She needs this. Because for Sylvie, she spent most of her life on the run. Like, you know, having to be that scared girl, little girl, not knowing what's going on, to like having this plan of revenge be all, it's consumed. It's been your everything. It's been your mission for years. It's been your goal. And now it's like, you're going to do everything. Like, you're going to put your every fiber, your every being into this mission. So that's the difference between them, is like, you're curious. You just want to know. She needs to know, because your situations are a little different. Yeah, you're a variant, but you accept things as they are. Sylvie doesn't. Like, her entire life was uprooted because of all of this. So that's an interesting development. I actually severely skewed away from where I actually wanted to start it, and that was with the Lokis, but obviously it's all important regardless. I was going to get to these points later on anyway, so we're just getting to them earlier. But circling back to the Lokis, we find out about the different Lokis. We meet classic Loki, boastful Loki, alligator Loki, which I love our Lokis. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, I'm so caught up in this, I didn't even find it so strange that there's an alligator here, and that's the crazy thing. And it seems like classic Loki, I assume all the other Lokis can, but it seems like in particular the classic Loki is the one that kind of translates for alligator Loki. We also find out about Kid Loki. He's actually the one in charge, and it's like, well, why are you going to listen to this kid? Well, what did you do that cause a branch in your timeline, Kid Loki? And he's like, I kill Thor. And I'm like, yo, that's some next level stuff. You killed your own, I mean, granted, he's not your blood brother, but still, like, because we also don't know his circumstances, whether it's like, oh, because typically, the way, once again, I'm picking this up from other people, in the comics when he's Kid Loki, the reason why he's a kid is because some people are saying, I think the storyline is basically he got scattered, like at least pieces of himself or maybe his power, and he got stuck as a kid, and he decides to stay as a kid. So either that's just like a young Loki, like, hey, whether everything that went down, he ended up killing Thor at a very young age and basically ended up being the one running things, or this is a Loki who later on turned himself back into a kid. I'm thinking it's just straight up Kid Loki. It's not like, oh, he turned himself into a kid, which I think is so interesting, because it immediately because I had to look it up. Remember, I forgot what it is. I want to say it's like, I'm blanking. There's an anime/manga series based around a Kid Loki. It's basically Case Closed, Detective Conan, but with Loki, essentially, and like Norse gods and stuff like that running amok. It's interesting. I remember watching it years ago, but I had looked it up recently because all this Loki and Norse mythology stuff kind of got me thinking about that. Because I think someone brought up Kid Loki, and that reminded me of that. Regardless, tangents and all that aside. But we did see at one point, like underground, there was like a Mjolnir, and then there was like a bottle. It had, I think, a Thor in it. I don't know what. At first, I was like, that's not like Frog or Toad Thor, is it? But I don't think it was. It looked like it was a human body, just like he got shrunk and stuck there. It looked like a Thor outfit. So I'm not sure what that circumstances were. But obviously, this is like the amalgamation of all these different timelines. So who knows what timeline that's from. That might be like I said, I don't think it was Frog or Thor lore. Toad lore. Toad Thor. I keep saying lore. Frog or Toad Thor. I don't think it was. It looked human, but I could be. I tried to rewind, but I still wasn't able to kind of really get a good look at it. But because he's trying to get to Mjolnir, because it's a little bit away from him. But once again, we kind of get to learn about the other Lokis. We never found out what alligator Loki's circumstances are. We found out about boastful Loki. Is like, yo, I defeated Captain America and Iron Man, and then I got the 6 Infinity Stones, and then and then classic Loki's like, oh yeah, that growl from alligator Loki, yeah, that was a growl, and also him calling you a liar. Then we find out about classic Loki, because for Loki it's like, the fact is there's an older version of us, we always end up dying, don't we? So like, that's always going to be the end of our tale. So how did you? And it turns out he's like, I'm the Loki from Endgame. I was like, I'm the Loki from Infinity War that died at the beginning. I used a very powerful illusion. So when I was, after everything went down, he thought he killed me, but I didn't. Because it's like, wait, you didn't try to stab Loki? You didn't try to stab Thanos? He's like, no. That's the thing about us. Like, weapons are kind of useless. Like, it basically hinders our powers. Like, we need to go full magic. Like, our full magic is where we really shine. Using weapons is just kind of like a deterrent from us using our full, like, if we really pushed into our magic, we'd be on another level, which I'm like, that's so fascinating. Especially considering, like, maybe it kind of infers to some of the stuff later on because of what we've seen so far. Because there have been moments where Loki's done some pretty impressive stuff, like stopping that building. We have never kind of gone back to that. Do note that was a time he didn't have a weapon on him because it's like, right, I'm just using my actual might. Or it could be the power of love because he was already hitting it off with Sylvie. So maybe like in that moment, it's like, right, I'm gonna protect her, and because Loki's always in it for himself, always his self-interest. So maybe in that moment, caring about someone else, it's that thing, the power of the heart. When you care about other people, it makes you stronger. Maybe that's what that was supposed to insinuate. I don't know. But it's that I think that sets up a lot of stuff for the future of Loki, of just like, right, don't always rely on a weapon. My magic is more powerful. But regardless, knowing that this is a Loki, because that's been a theory about what if this Loki goes back and it turns out like, oh, he goes to his timeline knowing how that's going to end, and basically he fakes his death. We see classic Loki is a representation. He's a variant of that. Like, so we actually get to know how that story would have played out. He basically lived in solitude, but lived on a planet alone, and then for a very, very long time, and then eventually he went to check in on his brother. He was lonely, and the moment he planned to get off the planet, that's when the TVA found him. Because he hadn't created a branch in the universe, because he wasn't out doing stuff. He stayed alone, so he wasn't affecting anyone else's timeline or anything being there. It's not until he planned, let me go find my brother, I'm getting ready to get off this planet, that he started creating a branch. That's so interesting, like how long you can go before you end up creating a branch. Which now that opens up the questions about like, well, what potentially if this Loki goes back playing out his timeline with the knowledge that he knows. I mean, technically, he's no longer in the timeline. His timeline technically doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, okay, so if that's the case, what would that mean with the future knowledge of knowing like where classic Loki's story ended up going? Like, where would your story end up if you were to do exactly what he did? Who's to say? Well, because obviously he didn't do that because this is a variant Loki. So main timeline MCU Loki is dead. That Loki, once you get to Ragnarok, he's supposed to die. So it's just so crazy to think about where the possibilities of what this could mean, like in the end of everything. But I'm going on this huge tangent. I do apologize. But then Loki brings up something else too. He was like, well, our Loki being like, okay, so if, have you guys ever met like a female variant of us? And it's like, oh no, oh, she must be terrifying. It's like, Loki's like, yeah, she is, but she's so like about this mission, even saying that, she doesn't want to take control of the TVA. She wants to bring him down. And it's like, together we could do this. Like for him, it's like, I'm going to go out there like that thing, like it devours everything, right? Goliath, well, I'm going to go out there together. We can kill it. And they're all kind of like, huh? And then all of a sudden they start bursting out laughing. All of them are laughing at him, which I think is so interesting. And he's just so like, he's like, monsters, how dare you laugh at me? Like, he calls them monsters, but I get it's just kind of like, oh, we're all Lokis, and you got the nerve to laugh at me because I want to fight back. I don't want to just simply survive like we do. I want to, find a way out of this. But as he's climbing up, lo and behold, we meet President Loki, which is interesting. Didn't cross my mind to think that Loki would be a variant. I thought that would be our Loki. I mean, I guess that's the whole point, because the trailer would make you think like, oh, I mean, once again, everything is out of context. So you'd assume our Loki is the one that became president, because obviously we didn't know the whole angle of variants and all that entails. So there's all of that. At the same time, there was like the Sylvie landing here, almost getting attacked by Goliath. And then all of a sudden, like, she gets a glimpse of something. I was like, what the hell was that? And we just moved past it. We get context for it later on by touching Goliath. She basically went inside of its mind and she saw something. It's like, what? I caught a glimpse of something. And as she's running, there's a car rolling up. I was like, is that my boy Mobius? Yeah, it's Mobius. That's also the thing too. We never get the full scope of the Void. We have no idea what else is in that world. What else like ended up getting dropped in there. but Mobius and Sylvie, spending a little bonding time together. It's like, right, she's done a lot of killing and stuff like that, but Sylvie's kind of like, yeah, she's done what she did to survive, and it's like being hunted by you guys, and even Mobius being like, yeah, sorry about that. But also, like, you know, it's like, are you really, can you really claim to be any better to me? Like, all the people you've killed by pruning timelines? And he was like, yes, but, you know, the ends justify the means. And it's like, right, so it was all okay. He's like, yeah, like, because I believed in what I was doing. Granted, now I know it was all BS. So, obviously, cutting back to the other, the Loki situation, interestingly enough, it turns out boastful Loki had betrayed them, which is like, that's the sad reality of it. It's like, because even later on, classic Loki, he's like, I can't believe that happened. Because for him, it's like, no matter what we do, we can never change. We're always going to be the selfish pricks that we are, you know? We're always going to, like, stab someone in the back and betray them. And so, it's like, it's almost like it's in our nature. It's not possible for us to change, is it? But I love that, like, President Loki, like, honestly, I'm not going to give you the throne. You really thought I was going to do that? He's like, but that's what you promised. But then, like, the others, like, end up betraying President Loki. Which there's a whole thing about, like, what's the alligator? He's a Loki. And then that alligator runs up, bites his hand, and literally bites his hand off. And it turns into a full-blown brawl with everyone else. Classic Loki, Kid Loki, and our Loki, and Alligator Loki end up escaping. So it's like, right, you know, initially, like, it's just like, well, what are we gonna do? And obviously for Loki, he's made his decision. Like, we need to do this. This is potentially our only way out of this. We need to get back to the TVA and stop them, because they're the reason all this is happening. They need to be stopped. So Kid Loki and Classic Loki and Alligator Loki agree to go. I even love the whole thing of, like, Loki's got his plan of what he's going to do. Is like, find that thing's head or heart or whatever it is and stab it or whatever. And then, like, Alligator Loki growls, and it's like, see, he's on my side. And then, like, Classic Loki's like, he's praying because he thinks we're going to all die. I love it. But then, lo and behold, who shows up at the time? Sylvie and Mobius is like, right, this is us as a kid, this is us older in the future, and this is us as an alligator. Sylvie gives him a look. He's like, it's best just to accept it and not explain. I'm like, I want to know what's up with Alligator Loki, because I think boastful Loki was like, I'm not the one that ate the wrong cat, which I'm like, what does that mean? Like, part of me's like, I'm thinking too much. I don't remember his name because I've yet to rewatch Captain Marvel. I need to take some time at some point in time to do that. I just haven't sat aside to do some time to do that because I need to rewatch that Endgame and Far From Home just for my MCU rewatch. But part of me is like, remember the cat from Captain Marvel that's actually like, I forgot its name, that's actually an alien? Like, I was wondering, like, you don't think he ate that cat, did you? I was like, what? I'm sure there's significant cats in the Marvel universe that he probably mistakenly ate. I don't know. But so it's like, Sylvie's like, wait, you were going to do this? She was almost like, that's ridiculous, that's stupid that you were going to do that. She's like, actually, what I plan on doing is enchanting it. And look, he's like, that's impossible. She's like, I'm going to get it done. You know, and Mobius kind of goes like, yeah, you know, I'm with her kind of on this plan. So there's a conversation about, you know, what's, you know, also, like, there's Mobius like, so this alligator's a Loki. Like, how do you know it's a Loki and it's not lying? And in classic Loki's like, well, he's green. I'm like, is that really all you're basing it on? He's green and he has a Loki helmet. And he's like, well, he could be deceiving you all, waiting to stab you in the back. He's like, but to be fair, that would solidify him as a Loki if that's the case. But it's like, you know, what's Sylvie and, well, first of all, what's Mobius going to do? And it's like, he plans to go back and tell everybody the truth because everyone has the right to know that basically everything that they believe in this mission is complete BS. So, but Loki and Sylvie are spending time together, and it's like the most adorable, awkward thing of like, oh, yeah, so do you think Mobius... Oh, yeah, Mobius said, like, yeah, we caused the neck... Yeah, that's crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, you know, there's more important things. Like, yeah, taking down the TVA. Yeah, saving the universe even. She's like, all right, that's being a little dramatic, but kind of, yeah, sure. It's actually really sweet because it's like... Because, you know, she even says, she's like, right, I never had any friends. I actually have no one. So for her, this is kind of new to her. And for Loki, he's never been in a situation where he's cared so much about another person because he has always been someone, he's like, right, I betrayed my father, I betrayed my brother, I betrayed my home, and for him, so he's never really, there's never been a person he's never betrayed before. She might be the first person, because he can't even say that to Mobius. It's like, right, we're buddies and everything now, because that was also a conversation about like, yeah, actually kind of, yeah, Mobius, he's not so bad, and Loki's like, yeah, but he's not so good either, so I think that's actually why we get along. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty dope. But he's like, oh, it's a little cold, and he kind of makes a blanket. He's like, I can make you one. She's like, could you make me a new outfit? But then he kind of makes the blanket and kind of expands it. She's like, what is this, a tablecloth? He's like, no, it's a blanket. She's like, no. But I like that, because for her, she also says, like, how do I know that you're not going to betray me? And he was like, because I did all of that, I am not the same person who did all that. I'm not that same person anymore, so I would never do that. What if, she's like, what if you find a timeline at the end of all of this where you get to reign, And it's like, yeah, but, what are you going to do when this is all over? And she has no idea. He's like, me neither, but maybe we can find out together at the end of all this. She's like, maybe. And I'm like, I'm crossing my fingers hoping that they do get to stick together and nothing does happen. I mean, because we don't know what's going to happen when everything, doing what they're going to do, exposing who's ever behind the TVA would probably undo all the, the TVA stopping the branch timelines and stuff. So it's like, what would happen at that point? We'd probably be entering the territory of the multiverse of madness. So, because this is setting the groundwork for that as well. I'm wondering, is it going to end up being something with Miss Minute? Because part of me is like, you don't think Miss Minute's the one behind everything? Probably not. Because once again, we still never got an answer for the, are you living or you were recording? Kind of both. What does that even mean? We've never got an answer to that. I think it'd just be very poetic if, a character in this universe voiced by Tara Strong being the villain. I think that'd just be, I'm sure, God, amongst her Marvel characters, because once again, I know she's done Marvel voices. I'm not familiar with voices she has done. I just remember looking it up. I don't know if she's played any villains in Marvel, but she has DC-wise, of course. The Lady of 1,000 Voices, Tara Strong, dude. Come on. That still trips me out, dude. I love Tara Strong, dude. She's amazing. I mean, hell, I've grown up listening to Tara Strong's voice. From Ben 10 to Timmy Turner. Come on, dude. That's, regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent and everything. I just part of me is a little suspicious of Miss Minute, but we'll see if anything comes about that. Because, God, I'm blinking. Ravonna is looking up information about she's looking up information about the end of time, so we'll see kind of where... No, the beginning of time, actually. So she's trying to figure out who started the TVA and stuff like that. So we'll see where things kind of go from there. But, obviously, when it's all said and done, Mobius is going to go back to the TVA, planning to burn it all down to the ground. Him and Loki saying their goodbyes and everything. He's like, see ya, Loki. And he's like, and hugs him and everything. He's like, goodbye, my friend. And then Mobius whispering, you're my favorite. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. That's so cute. So we'll see how Mobius' mission goes down. Along with that, classic Loki, Kid Loki, Alligator Loki decide to stay because nah, this is our home. So he gives Kid Loki gives our Loki a sword, and I'm like, it's a flaming sword, but part of me was like, that's not God, I'm gonna butcher his name. He's the dude that Thor kills at the beginning of Ragnarok. That's not like a variation of his sword or something, right? Because part of me was like, you don't think that's at first I was like, that's not going to end up being like a sword version of Mjolnir or something like that, right? That in that universe he took Mjolnir. I didn't know if that was what that was supposed to be or not. But Sylvie and our Loki decided obviously they're going to face this thing down, try and enchant it. So it's like, right, we're going to need to create a branch, but it's like, what if we can't? Going to need a distraction. So our Loki tries to be the distraction, and but its attention more so goes towards Sylvia as she's trying to enchant it. And lo and behold, who comes back? Oh, classic Loki. Dude, creating an illusion of Asgard. I was like, yes! dude, it's like, how is he doing that? You know, Loki's like, we're a lot stronger than we think. And it was just so badass. Like, despite everything, like, part of the illusion starts dying. He's still building it back up. It's like putting his everything into it. Showing that Lokis can change, that they don't just betray, that when the time comes, you know, I mean, and Loki's shown time and time again, it isn't just about betrayal. Granted, it always comes back to betrayal in the end, but I think him out of anyone, like that time of solitude, being alone, made him kind of appreciate things. So like, right, he believed in these other Lokis and he believed in trying to stop all this. So he's doing everything he can. And even at the end, glorious purpose. And, you know, all we see at the end is his helmet. I was like, no! As Sylvie and the other Loki, she's like, all right, we're going to need to work together. Like, you do the enchantment as well. He's like, I don't know how to do it. She's like, yes, you can. We're the same. So, as she's doing the enchanting, he closes his eyes and he's able to do it too. And then all of a sudden, they're able to enchant the thing and opens a pathway to who's ever behind the curtains. The curtains kind of have unveiled now. I guess this is a more almost literal version of the curtains in this particular regard of like a life being split like that. But this is it. This is potentially the series finale, season finale, because there's been talk about this being like potentially there being a season 2 to this. But it was designed much kind of like Falcon and the Winter Soldier / WandaVision to be a one-off, but unlike them, this definitely could. I mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier could definitely be more. We already know there's going to be a Cap 4, but there could be more to this after that at some point later on in the timeline. But at the very least, like, this is a package end-all be-all. So this is the finale now, whether it's series or just season. We'll have to wait and see. After this season finale airs, I'll wait till then to, you know, look up some information to see whether or not. There might be some stuff already out there, but the last time I was hearing anything, it's still just in the realm of possibility of there being a season 2. So it's going to be wild to find out, first and foremost, who's behind the TVA. What is going to happen to the TVA? Mobius is about burning it to the ground. Ravonna is all about maintaining it, at least for now, until she finds out who's behind all this. So Loki and Sylvie are going to meet the person behind all this, potentially kill them, end all this. It's like, what's going to happen next episode? I am so excited to find out how this ultimately all ends up wrapping up. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.